Welcome in. It is Backstretch Banter on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90. I'm your host, Chris Childers, where we talk all things RFK as we are going into New Hampshire this weekend. Coming out of Iowa, RFK in a great position right now as the season continues to unfold. Brad Keselowski in the top 10. In the point standings, he's sitting at number 9. Chris Buescher not too far behind at number 13. Keselowski has won. He is in the playoff, and Buescher's still knocking on heaven's door, even though he's had some incredible opportunities. He's been right there. He's lost by like 0.000005 or whatever the heck it was they determined a couple weeks back, but he's knocking on heaven's door. The car's running well. The team's got confidence, so let's get into it right now. Todd Brewer is our first guest today. We got some awesome guests on the show. We're going to talk about all kinds of different aspects of the race team. Jacob Wyne from the really from the partnership standpoint is going to be on a little bit later on, who's the vice president on that side, who works with Fastenal and builds submarines and all these great different partners that help fuel this race team financially. But let's get inside what's going on the track. Todd Brewer is with us, the director of operations at RFK. Todd, good to talk to you, man. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It is really cool to have you. You have been in this position now for roughly a year with Roush Fenway. You've been at Gibbs. You've been at Furniture Row, two different kinds of teams. Gibbs is obviously a giant. Furniture Row is having great success, but doing it not in Charlotte, doing it in Denver and proving it can be done. But now you're with a two-car team that's got a lot of history, that's got a owner-driver. How would you describe your job with RFK?
Oh, well, I think the biggest part is how to reimagine and reinvent ourselves, right? It's my view on looking at how we can get better and pull from all those different places. We're definitely not them by any means, so it's tying all that together and seeing what works best with no preset plan of this has to be this way. We're just going to go with what works, what puts the best race car out front there. So it's usually a good way to start it and mix it up from my end. It makes it easy.
Well, this is not me, kissing any kind of butt just because it's an RFK show, but I think the reality from any race fan is that the success is there. Brad Keselowski could easily win a championship by the end of the year, as could Chris Buescher. A lot of racing left, and those guys have put themselves in contention. So I think anybody would look at RFK and look at Gibbs and or Hendrick or any of the monsters and say, hey, RFK is right there. When you don't have the same amount of manpower, when you don't run the same amount of cars, when the building's not as big, but the results are there, how do you do that? I know we've changed eras. We went to the new car not too long ago. I don't know if that's the biggest factor, but how does a team like RFK produce as much as it does? Because I think right now any fan could recognize objectively that this team has a chance this year to win a championship.
Yeah, I think this new car was a great time to reset for RFK. It was able to do exactly that, is clean slate, reimagine. How would we do that? And we started making steps, and it was, okay, what's going to be the next big step in elevating us? And it comes down to our people. We really have to circle up around those people. We're less than those other organizations. So with that, it's empowering everybody. I try to make sure everybody knows that I want them to have equal equity in this for all of us. I want them to be here just as much as the next guy. So that's a big part, because we're asking. If we were asking you to do one thing, now it's asking you to do two things, just to keep it elevated, keep moving along at the schedule that we're keeping, and ultimately at the performance level we want to keep. It's asking a little bit more. And most all of us can say we can't do that just off of just the request. It takes something a little bit more inside everybody, and that comes with having ownership of it, having that pride of being able to accomplish that. So the first part was just getting that turnaround of performance and getting all those pieces to come together. and then that's that fuel that keeps us going. I know I tell a lot of people that racing's a losing sport. We'll lose more than we ever win, and but it's those victories, it's those steps that we take along the way that keep us motivated to keep digging. And so thankfully that was a big part of it, kicking that off and getting the performance side of it there.
Been in victory lane this year with the 6 car. Happened a few times last year with the 17, hoping that the 17 can reach victory lane this year a few times as well, and get into the playoffs and then some. So performance has been there, no question about it. I think leadership's important. It's really important that these people feel like their work matters. I think it
Sure.
matters to everybody that they get the proper amount of respect, that they get the proper amount of appreciation. How do you balance that, the highs and the lows? How do you celebrate the highs with your team to make sure that everybody is respected and make sure the lows are learning and they're not points where people get beaten up or get upset or get, we've had things happen, tires have fallen off. There's certainly been some bad luck along the way, and that's going to happen. But how do you manage those highs and lows with a race team from your perspective as a guy who's the director of operations?
Yeah, I mean, we have it internally, right? You can have things go wrong or definitely not to plan. And I think first part is when we have good runs, we want to own it and we want to be present for it and 100% outspoken about it. Well, we need to do the same even when we have failure. And I think that's a big part that it's going to happen. It's just keeping those big mistakes here in the shop. Because if we can maintain those things here, it doesn't get on the racetrack. And that is number one goal is keep it within these walls. So we can have that performance and not hinder us. We can't take it back once it goes out the downrange. So I think having people understand that and owning it here is a big part, and keeping them. We all are going to make mistakes. How fast you can come up to that person and say you made it and let's get on a corrective plan is what's going to set us apart. A lot of times you get pride involved, and it can really be a downfall. And we can't be. We have to show grace on those times with guys, knowing that I would hope my plan for them is they're going to be their biggest critic. You can sit there and you can be one of those guys that yell and cuss and get all worked up with them. At the end of the day, if you still see no emotion on the other side of that table, that's the scary problem.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to be and I don't want that to be the case, right? We've all worked at places where we've had bosses like that. I want them to know that they are being counted on, and it's not just here. It is a whole lot of other people, and so we just need to do better. We need to strive to do better when we have those mistakes, and then we can really enjoy those highs when we're running up front. When I want everybody to be upset when we finish second by .005. That's what we want, is to be disappointed with, in other words, a good finish. So I think that just comes from motivating them, and as far as making them feel they truly are part of the family, part of a collective group of people, that nobody's going to ask you to do something they're not willing to do themselves, is a big part of it.
Sure. Todd Brewer, our guest, who's the director of operations at RFK. I'm really curious, because you've been at Gibbs, you've been at some places that have had multiple race cars, up to 4, et cetera. What is the dynamic like when you have the 2 cars, as far as, okay, you're the ops guy, so there's going to be a lot of people under your umbrella that are representing the 6, that are representing the 17. Some are working a part of the team as a whole. But is it harder or is it easier for the teams to support each other when there's just 2? How would you describe that relationship with the 6 and 17? For example, when Brad won his race, Chris easily could have won that race. So I don't know what that dynamic is like. Can the 17 truly be happy for the 6? What is that dynamic like from your perspective as the guy who's running ops?
So the shop side of it, it's really the way we've changed and structured ourselves. there is no
Division.
there is no division of this. These are guys that assemble the 6 car. These are guys that assemble the 17. It's everybody. Everybody does those tasks, which is a lot. Pretty
So
different.
there's pride in both cars for
absolutely.
everyone, is what you're saying.
I think that's what sets apart from those big teams 100%. You have it. I've lived it. You have those groups.
So what was the emotion then when Brad won the race, but Chris had the issue? Was it like literally feeling the highest of highs and lowest of lows at once because of that?
Honestly, I think everybody was on the high.
Okay, so you can put that aside.
Yeah.
For, okay.
Yeah,
which is great. I think that's
as
healthy,
whole,
right?
It was on a high because
Sure.
one, we knew what it meant.
And Brad was waiting for that win.
Right. We all knew what it meant, and we all knew
Sure.
that, man, this was the little piece of spark in that old Christmas tree that we were going to set ablaze. So, and it's shown, right? Like progress. He's been so consistent right after that, and he's on a great little run. So we all knew the benefit of that win. We all knew it was coming, so it was more of a relief / excitement of, oh, okay, now let's go to the next step. Eager to see the fruit from that. But as far as the shop guys, man, I can say that everyone's really, really bummed about Kansas.
Sure.
That finish, we've had it to where you're disappointed that one finished not as well as they should have. But it's definitely not been overcasting the good times of it. And I think having groups, I've talked to some guys with teams shutting down and, people out there, it's interesting to hear how other organizations operate. And I think we're still unique in that aspect of it because most of those larger organizations, you get into, car counts of 3, 4, it's everybody has their own little pod. Everyone has their group that assembles it. Everyone has their groups that are building cars. And that's where I don't want us to be because it is a good thing to not have that label. I want everybody just to be RFK on that end of it. And then that's helps because you don't have to have that divide. It's not needed. I mean, we get a report card every week, and we don't need to create one in-house.
That's why I asked the question, honestly. That's why I was interested, because I would imagine with the bigger teams, they have their own little fiefdoms. Whether it's Hendrick or Gibbs, they have their own little cliques that they stick with their numbers, and I would understand why. But I think it's kind of cool to see a team with the dynamic that you're describing that's actually winning and having a chance to win. And I think that's easy to pull for. It really is when you actually have a team to root for with the 6 and the 17. You know what I mean? I think it's rare and I think it's cool. And I think it's refreshing. And certainly that the reset with the new car has helped a lot of that in the last couple of years. Let's take a break. Todd Brewer is our guest, Director of Operations at RFK. We can relive Iowa, but I want to get into what it's like to set up a car from the wrap perspective, from just getting it tuned up and ready to go to race every week, plate races, etc. There's probably a lot of nuance. So let's discuss it when we come back right here on Backstretch Banter. We're back here. It's Backstretch Banter on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. I'm your host, Chris Childers. Fun show today. We're heading to New Hampshire, coming off of Iowa. Todd Brewer is our guest, the Director of Operations at RFK. We got 2 really cool cars this week running in New Hampshire. We've got the Boston Red Sox paint wrap on the number 6 car with BuildSubmarines.com as the sponsor on the number 6 Ford Mustang, and on the number 17. It is a classic Fastenal wrap, and like I've said a million times on this show, 17 and Fastenal go together like peanut butter and jelly. So 2 great looking cars, hopefully 2 fast cars this weekend coming up near Boston. Todd, I'm curious what goes into it from the second that Sunday ends and the race is over and the cars are making their way back to Charlotte. Give us an idea of the calendar, the schedule from a wrap perspective, from a engineer perspective, mechanic perspective. What happens during the week to get these race cars ready?
Oh, a lot. So
I bet.
We'll kick it off. These West Coast Midwest races really put a kink in it just because of the
Sure.
distance, right? We
Uh-huh.
get we get spoiled at the beginning part of the season and do those stretches of it's there that night and it's ready to go on Monday morning. So in a perfect
Yeah.
world, that's where we'd be. Historically, we'll come out of the weekend. It'll go straight in. The shop will get the car off the hauler on Monday, and it'll go straight to the surface plate and let the plate guys debrief the car. They'll go through and do the setup, re-roamer, validate, make sure we have a good notebook for where we ended with our tools, and make sure that they correlate. And then we'll go into scanning the car, outer body and underbody, because it's just as important to record that information to help guide us on how our balance was and tying it all together from our side. So after that, it'll go to the teardown area, and literally in a matter of 3 hours, 4 hours, it'll be back to a raw chassis again. We strip it down all the way with greenhouse off, and it's just bumpers and the chassis itself with the front and rear clip still attached. After that, everyone goes off into their little worlds of scurrying to validate, service those parts, to cleaning them, to throwing them away. A laundry list of people go off and scatter at that point. Collective effort. We've learned that you can't just have everybody jump on the car at one time like you would have liked to, right? You think the more hands-on, the better. It just gets chaotic. You literally have 10 guys just crawling all over, fighting for real estate, trying to get their task done. So we've really tried to implement a timed teardown and getting certain groups in there, giving them their allotted amount of time. We have to lean on that schedule is key. Building it with good information is number one, and then that we get an idea of how long it takes to do all those tasks. So then we map that out. But we get those cars stripped and everyone back in play. Then that car immediately will go over to QC department, and we will CMM those cars again, validate that nothing is shifted or moved out of tolerance, and it gives us a brand new notebook for the sim group and for setup correlation. You're not using old files, you're using the latest files on the components to build those cars. And we go straight from that into getting ready to get it built up. We're on a 4-week cycle that we just are actively, as fast as we can service them, get them right back in the bays and build them up. So it's pretty quick. We try to keep it tight. We try to build a minimum 2 cars a week with our group. We have
How many people total is doing all that?
So in total, hands-on.
Just to give people an idea of like the amount of movement that's happening and the people
so
that are
just the guys on the floor and girls working I want to say it's around 64 total.
okay. So quite a
in
few
the
people.
other side of the wall, maybe not always touching the car, but actively
Okay.
along the
Around
same
it.
effort. Yeah. The groups
Interesting.
aren't that large, right? Like our build group, we have 6 guys that build the cars. Actually put the panels on, set them to our spec. So it's not a big group for a 2-car operation. Most places have multiple plates going
Okay.
where we build one.
Is that by design? Is that a cost thing? Is that like
Yeah,
how do
it's
you
just efficiency thing. The number
Okay.
one is not to have separation, not to have a car, because the thing about these cars nowadays, it's a process. Everything about it is a process. We all have the same parts. It's how you put them on, sequence, procedure driven. So if you have 2 different groups doing that task, most likely you're going to come up with a different result, or you're going to have to absorb a ton of time to get that look of the same car between a 6 and 17. So we found that it's just easier to get the same group to go off and build them. They'll stagger it out. When we get the car to a certain level, a couple will branch off and go working on the other one and get that one elevated. So there's always this little cycle to move on, because with our tools we scan the car continuously while we're working on it, trying to build it. So we always are referencing back to our datum and the gold surface. So by doing that, we can really speed it up, because we can know that we're good. We don't put it on, then take time to scan the whole thing, and then have to go back and work on it. We try to get that section done at a time. So that's different, I feel like, than what's out there right now, especially with our size. So that whole group is actively working on that. And then we have 8 guys that are working on the suspension, driveline, getting that all prepped and ready to go. Interior, they're getting builds put together and then coming down and installing it as well. So they have to do those. I mentioned earlier, if I asked you to do 1 task, now you're doing 2. That's sort of it. Is now you're prepping, you're getting parts ready, and then go ahead and go put it on the car kind of aspect. So they stay busy on that end. The front side is getting cars stripped apart. Then they go into a clean prep day, assemble day, and then install kind of day for those guys.
Do you guys get? You can't, because you've been doing it for so long. But do you get as excited about the wraps as fans do? Because I think as a fan, I really you care less when it's on there.
I mean, I care when it's on there.
Yeah,
I don't get excited about it.
Is that a process? Like, is that hard for a team? Like, it always seems so beautiful when you walk by it on a grid. But the wrap to me, like the Red Sox wrap to me, like if I saw it for the first time, I'd be giddy. I'd be like, look at this thing. But you don't give a crap. You just want it on.
Well, we all enjoy. Like we love when the 600 comes around, because you're gonna have a special paint scheme.
Yeah.
We love Darlington. Yeah. You get excited, like, hey, that looks pretty good. That looks cool. On the day-to-day of wraps,
not really. Just get it
what
done.
It entails, and then the drama that can always comes afterwards of, man, somebody scratched this thing. Okay, we got to go rewrap it.
Oh, really? And How often does that happen?
Too often.
Really? Okay.
I mean, it's just the way we hold a schedule, and the way we're structured is we have to try to get ahead any time we can. So you try to get parts done. People still have to work on it, and we dyno late in the week. We'll dyno on Friday, the week before in the event, and somebody could scratch it getting in and out of the car to just rolling around. It's not what we're going to send to the racetrack, right? We're not going to send it to the track with big old scratch off the side of it.
Yeah.
Now there was a time in life that you would, but all the way down to how we carry ourselves and what we expect, we're not going to. And that's the misery of feeling like, oh man, the wrap's on it, or somebody coming. We have blankets. They're not truly blankets, but we have covers that we have made that go over the nose, go over the door, all these things to protect this wrap, because it's like, just don't mess this up. Right?
Just don't mess it up. I don't
everyone
want to
do their job, but please don't scratch it. Take off all belts. That's
well, maybe annoying for you guys to deal with, but I know as fans, we get excited about it and we love it. And we like to buy our favorite die casts and our favorite wraps and all that. So it certainly is fun, and we appreciate the effort that goes into the cars and making them look pretty. Because I'll tell you what, there's nothing for a fan cooler than walking down the grid and seeing all those bespoke machines looking clean at the beginning of a race. It's pretty special. But
then you get excited when you see it at the end, right? Or even with all the rubber all over it.
100%. But it's a process. It's an evolution.
Absolutely.
Todd, it's great to meet you, man. Thanks a lot for coming on today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, Todd Brewer is the Director of Operations at RFK. We'll go with the VP from a partnership perspective. Jacob Wyne is going to join us next on the program. He is the VP of Partnership Sales for RFK. Cannot wait to pick his brain about all things from that side of the business. We'll do it next right here. It's Backstretch Banter, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. Welcome back. It is Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing on Sirius XM NASCAR Channel 90. So good to be back on the show this week. I am Chris Childers. We are going to New Hampshire this weekend, which means some really cool wraps, at least really one cool. Well, I should say they're both cool, but one's really uniquely special to the area on the Build Submarines #6 Ford Mustang this weekend. But it's awesome. Jacob Wyne is our guest right now, who's the vice president of partnership sales for RFK Racing, which I think is a really, really interesting position for anybody that's in a NASCAR world because partners are everything. So certainly this is an important job for a team. But Jacob Wyne, our guest. Jacob, it's good to talk to you, man. How are you?
Likewise, Chris. Thanks for having me. I am great. I'm glad I finally got to join the show.
I'm so glad that you're on. When I saw that you were coming on, I said, this is really going to be interesting because you have a unique job and a unique relationship. And Roush Fenway Keselowski has a lot of unique partners from an advertising perspective. They have partners from a sports perspective. When you think of the Penguins and the Red Sox are going to be featured this weekend on the #6 car with Build Submarines, which is a really cool wrap. It looks so cool. And I can't wait to talk about it. From Liverpool over the pond in the Premier League, there's a lot of different relationships. Tell us what you do. Being the vice president of partnership sales means what for this race team?
It means, in my respective role, I carry a lot of weight in the organization, I think.
Yeah, I bet.
The commercial success that we have is the viability ultimately of our organization and what we're willing and able to do, both on and off the racetrack. So when it boils down to it, my team's, their day-to-day is making up about 75% of this company's operating revenue. So our ability to go find new commercial partners to support our NASCAR endeavors and the things that we want to do as a race team are very impactful to the overall success of RFK Racing and the things that we're doing. As it relates to Fenway, we're set up very unique in the sense that I report into Steve Newmark, our team president, but also have a dotted line into Ryan Fisher, who is the chief revenue officer at Fenway Sports Management. FSM is an agency of sorts that sits inside the broader Fenway Sports Group and runs all of the commercial sales operations across the Red Sox, the Pittsburgh Penguins, Liverpool Football Club, RFK Racing, and then also is very tied to the outside representation business and some of the things they're newly getting into with the LPGA Tour, the long-standing relationship with LeBron James and his rights and being in the market with those. So as my group sits here in Charlotte, we feel like we're part of a much broader team that sits in New York and Boston and Pittsburgh and even globally across the pond with those 40 individuals that are responsible against those properties too. And the way within which we sell across the entire portfolio has it's opened a lot of doors for us that I don't think would have otherwise, and uniquely positions RFK Racing in the marketplace.
Dig a little deeper. I find it fascinating that they can feed off of each other. How RFK Racing, which really serves a certain, really certain clientele, could feed off the Penguins, could feed off the Red Sox, could feed off of Liverpool and LeBron James. Give me an idea of what you're talking about, some of those relationships, because I really think it's interesting. And I think fans will be really fascinated by that because we all think of these individual companies, but you're associated with the Fenway Group, which has certainly got some really impressive properties. But what doors have opened that maybe would not have opened?
So BuildSubmarines.com is a really good example in the relationship we have with the Blue Forge Alliance.
Really cool thing. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yep. So Justin Hand, who sits on my team here in Charlotte, uncovered them watching March Madness a little over a year ago now. But we use Fenway's insights and analytics team to comb through NASCAR data. Who is our fan base? How do they align uniquely to brands, companies, initiatives that we know about in the marketplace? And then we take that and use that from a sales approach and outreach perspective. That way we know early in a process that we can help these companies target the right data sets of consumers through NASCAR. Now, with that process, we had a preliminary meeting, phone call, invited them to the Circuit of the Americas race last year. And at Circuit of the Americas, we found out that their interest was more than just in NASCAR. Obviously a great fit. the
Yeah.
NASCAR world is seeing everything unfold that we've done with Blue Forge Alliance and the BuildSubmarines.com program, and it's going to continue to grow and prosper into more. But we learned that weekend from the executive team at Blue Forge Alliance that, baseball was important, and specifically having a presence in the Boston market, given the connectivity to the shipyards and how important those shipyards and those folks that are working in the shipyards are to the success of the entire overall program of the submarine industrial base. So very early on, we knew this wasn't just going to be a NASCAR initiative, but that once we got NASCAR up and running and off the ground for them, we were going to go have a conversation about baseball. We were going to talk about how they could get integrated at Fenway Park and what they could do and how they could show up with the Red Sox.
Interesting. It really is. And I find the whole business of NASCAR fascinating. Jacob Wyne, our guest, the VP of Partnership Sales, as we are deep into the NASCAR season. And I'm sure there's a lot of new sponsors that are now understanding what kind of bang they can get for their buck, whether it's consumer cellular, whether it's buildsubmarines.com, which has an incredible wrap. The Red Sox wrap on the number 6 Ford Mustang this weekend looks so cool. When I look at the pictures, I really think it's going to pop. I think the Red Sox and Build Submarines are going to get a lot of run this week, and people are going to notice it. It would look even better if it was sitting in Victory Lane. We got our fingers and toes crossed for that, but I think regardless, and the way Brad's been running this year, it's going to get a lot of airtime, certainly, and I think it's going to be really, really good. What kind of feedback do you get from new sponsors as the season unfolds? Consumer Cellular has done some really interesting things, from the car, the convertible, the NASCAR convertible. They've had really cool commercials that have been running during the races. Build Submarines obviously is trying to recruit people to essentially serve our country. I mean, you're not joining the military, but you're building things that we need to protect our borders. And I think that is a super noble cause that they're selling. But for you, from your perspective, what kind of ongoing feedback and conversation do you have with sponsors during the season?
Yeah, as part of the sales process, we like to learn very early how we'll measure success of a program, because we want to make sure that we internally are doing everything we can to make sure that we're activating and deploying the right assets and resources in the right ways to ladder up into those key KPIs that our partners have. Each partner we have is unique. Obviously, you mentioned buildsubmarines.com and just trying to promote jobs with a purpose and a way to support the United States of America without having to hold a rifle, and doing it in a very unique way. With Consumer Cellular, obviously their goals are a bit different, and had a desire to engage with an older audience, which we know that NASCAR has a more mature audience, aged 45 and up, and for them, their core demo is 60 and up. It's folks that are retired, but they need to get to that 45 to 60-year-old before they retire, and start to have their brand resonate and be well positioned when that transition happens from the cellular providers that they're on today to a consumer cellular type of provider that they could have an option to in the retirement phase of their life. So each one different. I would say more than anything, our partners are trying to just drive deep emotional connections with the NASCAR fan and show up in a meaningful way well beyond the paint scheme. The paint scheme this weekend at New Hampshire with the Red Sox on it, it's beautiful. The fans are very excited about it, but it's driving a deeper connection with the fan base than we would have otherwise. And those things are important. And then just looking at ways, again, we can measure the success of the programs. We love to hear feedback from our partners and know that we're doing the right things. And if we're not, how we can pivot to do things a little bit differently.
Super interesting. It really is. I think the whole business of it, because it's what funds everything. You've got to have money. You got to have great partners in order to run these races, in order to have a successful team, in order to have fast cars, in order to have good employees. It all goes hand in hand, and you want to make sure you have a good partner. I mean, somebody that certainly understands the value, is willing to have great activations, and I think certainly RFK's done a good job of attracting that. My curiosity comes into the relationship that you've had, and you're the vice president there of partnership sales, which obviously puts you in a really important role. But Fastenal has been with the team for so long. It's been so important. I think everybody that sees the number 17 immediately in their mind thinks Fastenal. It goes hand in hand. That car, that number, even if Chris is running Castrol Edge or whatever it is, you always just immediately in your mind think the number 17 in Fastenal. So Fastenal's done that. They've certainly got the benefit and the payoff of some wins here last season, and the car has been ultra competitive this year in position to do really well. But as you go to attract other partners, what is the value of the fact that you've been able to keep Fastenal and you've been able to keep them happy and satisfied for as long as you have when you go and sell these packages?
Yeah, it's a great case study for us looking at the longevity of that program, and not just Fastenals, but Fifth Third Banks and the relationship we've had with Ford Motor Company for 3 decades. Those mean a lot. Those are big brands that are very credible, and for us to sit across the table from another company and talk about that, it matters and gives us credibility in those conversations. The other thing I'd tell you is with a Fastenal and Fifth Third, their programs have been so dynamic over 10 years. Like the goalposts are always moving. They've always, over 10 years, their initiatives haven't stayed the same as a company, but it says a lot about our race team and our programs and our ability to kind of move and be dynamic for them as partners, whether that's the messaging they're trying to achieve, or the stories they're trying to take to market and tell about the company, or it may be new verticals that they're launching within their companies that we've been supportive of. Our ability to be creative from a marketing perspective for our sponsors and be dynamic in the way within which we can do things for them, it says a lot that over a 10-year period of time, Fastenal's had dozens of different initiatives we've worked on with them. And we're not going to work for everybody. We're not the right thing for everyone, but when the alignment's there from a demographics perspective and geography perspective, and you work through those things, we can generally build programs that resonate really well and can shift on a dime and change from week to week, quarter to quarter, year to year.
I want to stay with that, and we'll take a break right now. Jacob Wyne is our guest here, the Vice President of Partnership Sales at RFK, because I want to get a little deeper into some of these relationships. I really do think, for a NASCAR fan, we understand how important these relationships are. And I think getting to learn about the partnerships, how they're made, the value for both is kind of cool. So let's continue to talk about it when we come back. It's right here on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing.
That's great. We're 14 minutes in, so we need another 10 or so from Jacob, and we'll be half and half.
All right, here we go. Ready?
Jacob, you're doing great, by the way.
Hell yeah.
He was nervous as hell earlier.
Oh, dude, it's so good. Why? Yeah.
Perfect.
I will say, Jacob, can you move the mic away from your face just a tad bit?
Yep, I'm leaning in.
I would never have guessed he was nervous. Yeah. You ready?
1 second.
Okay.
Yep, good to go.
Okay, 3, 2, and 1. We're back here on Backstretch Banter, SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. I'm Chris Childers. Fun show today, really was. As we turn our attention to New Hampshire, I want to thank all the great people involved. Alec Walt, our producer back in D.C., from the great people to help us put it on, from Woods to Thomas Burfield, Elijah, great people, Brandon Lee. So we appreciate everybody's help, and RFK and everything they do for us every single week. We say thank you. Jacob Wyne with us, as I said, the VP of Partnership Sales. We were just talking about some of these partnerships, and Fastenal has been a partner for a long time. And you said that their goals have kind of evolved over the years, that, some things that they want to do as a company, but they've stayed loyal to RFK. And certainly I think they're getting great value in return from the investment, because the cars are running hot. They're running in the top 10. They're winning races, and I think they got to be thrilled with that. With that said, I'm really curious about the importance of the quality of the human behind the wheel because, previously in the 17, you had Stenhouse, and, Stenhouse is what he is, and people can have his opinion, have their opinion. But, we've obviously seen him throw a haymaker at somebody here in the last couple of weeks. Chris Buescher was in a very heated situation the week before, and nothing even close to that, because he's a civilized human being, came close to happening. My question is, how important is it, or is it important to Fastenal that Buescher's Chris Buescher? And for those that don't know or have never met him, he's one of the most genuine, normal, down-to-earth, kind human beings that have ever walked. I mean, really, for a racer, I'm amazed at how quality of his character. But what does that mean to Fastenal?
It means a lot. I've been to a number of events, sponsor appearances that Chris has done since I joined the organization 4 years ago, and I actually had the privilege of working with Chris when he was with Front Row Motorsports too for a short period of time. And he, to your point, just down to earth, salt to the earth, very genuine, humble human being. And every once in a while, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, you get to see him come out of his skin a little bit, and I think we're all okay with that too, and we liked seeing that. But as it relates to Fastenal and the partners that surround Chris, he's the kind of guy that, again, we'll go to an appearance, and we were at one a couple weeks ago in St. Louis. It was a 2-hour appearance, and we ended up being there an hour later because Chris stood there having conversation and long-winded discussions with customers it was Travel Centers of America and Castrol. And those things mean a lot to those executives that work within our brand partners that, on a very busy event weekend at 9:00 at night, Chris has, stayed out late and spent time with their customers because he knows the importance of them to the overall program and the satisfaction and the things it means to their ability to turn an ROI on the things that they're doing with us. He knows his role within which we need him to play in the overall sponsor operation, and it's very genuine when he does it.
Jacob Wyne, VP of Partnership Sales here on Backstretch Banter. So I'm curious, from your perspective, you worked at Front Row and you had a similar position, and Front Row certainly had its fair share of success. But I'm wondering what it's like for you to, from your perspective as a VP of Partnership Sales, to work with a guy who's an owner-driver, who is one of the cars you're trying to sell, the number 6, Brad Keselowski. Yet he's going to have input on everything. He's going to have a thought on what you guys should be doing. How does that affect your job and how you do things? Is it an advantage or not?
It is an advantage, and I would tell you that it's also refreshing. I've worked in my career, again, at Front Row Motorsports and for Bob Jenkins and Jerry Freeze, who are great human beings, and I enjoyed every moment of that. I spent nearly 4 years in Daytona Beach working at International Speedway Corporation, and then through the acquisition with NASCAR, and loved working for the France family and those executives down there. Being here, being tied to Roush and Fenway, but having Brad here now as a very hands-on owner has been refreshing. You know he cares. You see him every day. He is very heavily involved, and in my seat, it's better to know that he's involved and cares versus 180 degrees the other direction, where his name's just not on the building and it doesn't matter as much to him. So having him here, it certainly helped us from the sales side of things. We have asked Brad to participate in some sales outreach a time or two, and he's very good at it. When you put him in a room with the right level of executives and the pitch is there, Brad's very good in those moments, and it's nice knowing that the guy driving the race car and that you're trying to sell also wears the owner hat, and he can speak to all these things 360 and what it means for our partners to be involved at a high level.
He understands the business. He understands
Totally.
and he's smart, and he's really smart. So I think that certainly plays into it as well. How much is Jack Roush involved with you in the partnerships and helping the sales?
Um, since my time here, Jack's not been involved
Okay.
too awful lot on the sales side of things. He's really trusted. Again, with the structure that we have within Fenway is very unique.
Sure.
Jack and the Roush side of the business has always been, in my mind, our competition arm, and that baton was passed to Brad when he came on as an owner
Okay.
and head of competition. Fenway's kind of sat literally, quite literally, in the middle of the R and the K,
Yeah.
with the F in the middle, but they've always been the commercial entity of our business when it comes to
Okay.
that sales piece. Now, prior to my time being here, I know that Jack was a little more involved and had helped broker a couple deals in the past for us, and maybe those are stories for another day with Kevin Woods and some of those long
Sure.
tenured members of the RFK racing staff.
I'm sure Woodsy could tell his
I-
fair share of interesting stories about Jack Roush and closing sales over the years, especially during the early days when it was just the R in the RFK, when it was just Roush Racing. Certainly, I'm sure he's got some pretty compelling stories. Jacob Wyne is our guest. I want to get back to the Fenway aspect of it and how you say it plays heavily into the commercial aspect. Do you ever take meetings like? So I'm a big soccer fan, football fan, and you know what they call it in Europe. And do you ever are you ever actively on calls with representatives from Liverpool or with the Red Sox? Like, is there ever that overall team aspect to it? Or like, for example, if you wanted to go to a Liverpool match, would you be welcomed with open arms as a part of the organization? Like, I'm curious how that relationship works.
Yeah, very, very often. In fact, we look towards each other's partners to see if there's opportunities within the other respective properties to talk about.
Yeah.
But many times have I been involved in pitch meetings where, it's an hour and a half meeting, and you've got it broken up into 30-minute sections where my counterpart with the Red Sox pitches the Red Sox, and then RFK comes in and we give the RFK spiel, and then my counterpart from the Pittsburgh Penguins comes in and closes it up. That is the way we're set up to operate, and the way for us to go to market as that
That's so
portfolio.
interesting.
Yeah, that portfolio continues
Is
to
Liverpool
grow.
involved at all, or is it just the American entities?
Yeah, they definitely are. Obviously, some bit of disconnect because they're across the pond. Our global partnerships team that sits in New York deals with Liverpool a lot more than we do here at RFK. But we get together 2 to 3 times a year as a company. And when I say as a company, the Fenway Sports Management side of our business gets together 2 to 3 times a year. There's 45 of us that will have offsite meetings and talk about collaborative ways within which our properties could be working together, unique ways for us to go to market, unique ways that we can be more efficient as sellers, talking more consistently across the portfolio. We feel like with the strength that we have within our company, we should be able to open any door to go have a conversation with any brand marketer in the world. I believe that a lot of the times because we just have that connectivity across our portfolio, and the way it's set up has worked out really well for us, and that's the way it's been for about 2.5 to 3 years now.
It's really cool. The car this weekend is awesome. Fenway, the Boston Red Sox is all over it with buildsubmarines.com. You got the cool pinstripe look going on. The Red Sox logo is timeless. It is Americana and then some. The New Hampshire race is right down the road, and it's just cool. It just works, and I think it's going to be awesome. It's going to be celebrated. Fans are going to be into it. Certainly a diecast that I am looking forward to potentially purchasing here soon. Anytime you get ones like that, those special ones with the teams on it and stuff like that, that's the way to get me to drop, $100 on a little car that's gonna sit on my shelf because I just think they're so cool. And I will say this: has there been ever any talk of a Green Monster themed car out of it? Because that would be just to me unbelievably cool.
That's a great question. Not Not that I've been involved in. Those discussions have not happened, but you're right. It would be rather cool. We'll have to look
It would
into
be
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
I just think the way you could do it with the mascot and I don't know. I just think it's like on the hood with the face. It would be unbelievable. And the Red Sox just have so much to sell. So much, and everybody, even if you're not a Sox fan, as long as you're not a Yankee fan, I don't think anybody hates the Red Sox because everybody loves going to Fenway Park.
Here.
There's nobody that's like doesn't love going to Fenway Park. So it's just one of those teams. I don't think you're gonna piss many people off when you have a Red Sox logo because it's just they're so cool, so historic, and so loved, and they have one of the great cathedrals that they play in. And the fact that I always thought this race team was extra cool because there's that Fenway in the middle of the R and the K, which I think is awesome. Plus, you got two of the great names in racing that are cornering those in Roush and Keselowski. So it's pretty darn special. It really is. Jacob, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, and let's talk again soon. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Chris. We'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. That's Jacob Wyne. He is the VP of Partnership Sales for RFK. We are done for the week. Enjoy New Hampshire. Enjoy the Red Sox wrap. It's pretty cool. And we'll do it again next week. I'm Chris Childers. It is Backstretch Banter. You've been listening to SiriusXM NASCAR Radio.